Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty interesting today, the idea of an entrepreneurial vocation from a Christian perspective, of course.
Yeah.
And we've got a really fascinating mix of sources.
We do.
Theological writings, papal speeches, even some scholarly articles on economics.
It is a pretty unique blend.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely not your typical business podcast.
Not at all. It's interesting to see how these seemingly separate worlds,
Yeah.
faith and business, can intersect.
Exactly, yeah. And you know me, I love digging into those unexpected connections. And what really caught my eye as I was doing some of the prep work for this deep dive was this idea that entrepreneurship could be a holy calling, which is not something you hear very often.
It's not a typical Sunday sermon topic.
No, it's not. But that's what we're going to be unpacking, how these business practices connect back to some of those biblical parables. We'll even uncover some practical tips for weaving faith into work life.
Okay.
But first, I think it's helpful to sort of set the foundation here.
Right.
We're talking about vocation. We're talking about holiness.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Well, the concept that faith should permeate all aspects of life,
Right.
not just Sundays,
Yeah.
is foundational in Christianity. It's this idea of a universal call to holiness.
So it's not about becoming a saint in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Living apart from the world.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Holiness is meant to be lived out in the everyday.
Okay.
And that includes our work.
Our work.
In fact, the concept of work itself predates the fall of man. It was part of God's plan from the beginning.
So work isn't some kind of punishment.
Yeah.
I'll admit I've definitely felt that way on some Monday morning.
I think we all have.
But if work was part of the original plan, that kind of changes things.
It does. It changes how we view work.
Yeah.
And Pope John Paul II, in his writings on the gospel of work, he takes this idea even further. He connects it back to Genesis, where humanity is tasked with cultivating and caring for creation.
Right.
We're called to be co-creators with God, and work is a fundamental part of that.
So even when we're doing those mundane tasks,
Right.
it's like we're participating in something much bigger
Exactly.
than ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's work in general.
Right.
But what about this entrepreneurial vocation specifically?
Yeah.
How does that fit into this picture of work and holiness?
Well, that's where things get especially intriguing. The entrepreneurial vocation has some unique characteristics
Okay.
that set it apart.
Okay.
We often associate entrepreneurs with risk-taking, persistence, creativity, the ability to solve problems on the fly, and adapt to constant change.
Those are certainly traits you see in successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily connect those traits with holiness.
Right.
I mean, are we saying that those qualities are inherently holy?
It's not about the traits themselves, but how they're used. And it's fascinating to see how these very qualities were emphasized centuries ago by St. Bernardine of Siena.
Oh, wow.
He was a Franciscan preacher
Okay.
who stressed things like efficiency, responsibility, hard work, and even taking calculated risks
Yeah.
as essential for a virtuous life.
Wow. So there's a historical precedent for linking these entrepreneurial traits to a life of faith.
There is.
I'm starting to see how entrepreneurship could be more than just a way to make money.
Exactly.
It could be a way to express certain virtues.
Exactly. And when we look at it, theologically, it goes even deeper.
Okay.
Through their work, entrepreneurs
Yeah.
actually participate in God's own creative and providential work in the world.
So they're not just building businesses.
Right.
They're tapping into something much, much bigger.
That's right.
That's a pretty powerful concept.
It is.
But I'm curious, how does Scripture itself shed light on this? I mean, we hear a lot about the dangers of wealth, material possessions. Doesn't that contradict this whole idea of an entrepreneurial vocation?
It's a common misconception.
Okay.
Scripture often gets misinterpreted on this point. What's often overlooked is that there are plenty of biblical figures
Okay.
who were both wealthy
Yeah.
and righteous.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Give me some examples.
Well, think about Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who repented and gave away half of his possessions.
Okay, yeah.
Or Joseph of Arimathea, the wealthy disciple, who provided the tomb for Jesus.
Oh, right, yeah.
Even the Good Samaritan in that famous parable used his resources to care for a stranger.
That's true.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it that way. So it's not wealth itself that's the issue,
Right?
but what you do with it.
Exactly. It's about the attitude of the heart.
Okay.
But one of the most powerful examples from Scripture is the parable of the talents in Matthew 25.
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Of course, the one where the master gives different amounts of talents to his servants,
Right?
And they're supposed to do something with them, right? But how does that parable relate to entrepreneurship?
Well, think about the entrepreneurial spirit embodied by the servants who invested their talents and multiplied them.
Right.
They took risks.
Yeah.
They were creative.
Yeah.
They utilized their skills to the fullest.
Okay.
That aligns perfectly with what we see in successful entrepreneurs today.
So the parable is actually encouraging us to take risks.
Yes.
Be creative.
Yes.
And use our God-given talents.
That's right.
That's a very, very different message than what you often hear.
It is.
Okay, so the key takeaway is that God gives us gifts, talents,
resources,
not to be buried out of fear,
right,
but to be used,
invested, grown.
Yeah, okay. I love that. And the master's joy and reward for those who multiplied their talents. That really speaks to the potential for good.
It does.
That exists within entrepreneurship.
It absolutely does. It highlights how profit, when pursued ethically and with a spirit of service, can be a sign of good stewardship.
Okay. But what about the servant who buried his talent?
Right.
He represents the opposite, right?
He does.
He played it safe.
He didn't even try.
And ended up being called wicked and slothful.
Exactly.
Right. He represents those missed opportunities.
Yes.
And a failure to utilize those gifts that he was given.
Right.
That's a powerful message for all of us, not just entrepreneurs. I mean, we all have talents that we need to be putting to good use.
Absolutely.
But I think there's even more to unpack here. What do you think our listener, maybe someone considering starting a business, or even just trying to live their faith better, what can they take away from this parable?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
There are so many layers here. One thing that jumps out at me is that the parable challenges the idea that unequal wealth distribution is inherently unjust. I mean, the master gave different amounts to each servant based on their abilities.
That's a crucial point. It's not about everyone having the same amount.
No.
But about recognizing and utilizing each person's unique talents.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that ties into the principle of subsidiarity.
Yes.
I'll admit I had to look up. But it's essentially about empowering individuals and smaller communities to take initiative rather than everything being controlled by some central authority.
Exactly.
And it's also about solidarity.
Yes.
Working together for the common good.
Right.
The parable illustrates how individuals working for their own gain in a healthy economic system can actually contribute to the overall prosperity of the community.
That's right.
Remember, the total wealth in the parable increased.
Yes.
Meaning one person's gain.
Yes.
Didn't come at the expense of others.
Precisely.
That's a really important point. It shows how entrepreneurship, when done well, can be a force for good.
Right.
Both for the individual and for society as a whole.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that balance between pursuing profit and serving the common good. But I think the real question is, how do we actually live this out?
Right.
How do we take these lofty theological concepts and apply them to the nitty-gritty of running a business?
That's the question.
That's what I'm wondering too.
Yeah.
We've laid some amazing groundwork. But now I want to get practical. What does it actually look like to live out this entrepreneurial vocation faithfully, especially amidst the pressures and temptations of the business world?
Right.
So we've established that this entrepreneurial vocation is a real thing.
Right.
It's about way more than just making money.
Yeah.
But how do you actually live it out?
Right.
It all sounds great in theory,
Yeah.
but what does it look like in practice, day to day?
That's the million-dollar question. And thankfully, our sources offer some pretty insightful guidance.
Sure.
One of the first things that struck me as I was reading through some of these was the emphasis on sanctity in business.
Mm-hmm. Sanctity in business?
Yeah.
Wait, are we talking about building businesses and monasteries now?
Uh-huh.
Because I'm not sure I'm cut out for that.
Not quite. It's not about literally living in a monastery.
Okay.
But rather approaching your work with an underlying spirit of holiness.
Okay.
Remember, we're called to be good stewards
Mm-hmm.
of everything God has given us.
Right.
And that includes our businesses, our resources, even our time.
So it's more about making decisions in line with our faith.
Right.
Even when they're tough, or they go against, typical business practices. I can see how that could be challenging. Have you come across any real world examples of this, like people actually putting this into practice?
Definitely. There are businesses out there that prioritize fair wages, ethical sourcing.
Mm.
Even if it means slightly lower profits.
Oh, wow.
There are companies that build in time for employee volunteering or donate a portion of their proceeds to charitable causes. It's about seeing your business as a force for good in the world, not just a means to personal gain.
That's inspiring. It's like a whole different way of thinking about the purpose of business.
It is.
But I imagine it takes a lot of discipline.
It does.
To stay focused on that bigger picture, especially when you're dealing with the day-to-day pressures of competition, deadlines. Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in that pursuit of success.
Yeah.
And kind of forget about the bigger why.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And that's why our sources emphasize the importance of recognizing that everything we have, our talents, our resources, even opportunities, are ultimately gifts from God.
So it's about recognizing that we're not solely responsible for our success.
Right.
That there's a higher power at work.
Exactly. And that recognition should lead to a posture of humility and gratitude. It's about acknowledging God's role in our endeavors and responding accordingly. It changes your perspective.
Okay.
Helps keep your ego in check.
Okay, I can see how that mindset shift would be helpful.
Right.
Especially in the face of temptation. Let's be honest. The business world is full of temptation.
It is.
Consumerism is rampant.
It is.
There's constant pressure to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
To acquire more and more. How do you resist that pull?
It's a constant struggle for sure.
Yeah.
Our sources are very clear about the pitfalls of consumerism and remind us to be mindful of our spending habits, our desires, and an overall relationship with material possessions. It's about asking yourself, do I really need this?
Yeah.
Or am I just caught up in that cycle of wanting more?
That's a great question to ask. It's so easy to get swept up in that cycle. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes. It's like a constant tug of war between wanting more and being content with what you have.
Exactly. And finding that balance.
Yeah.
Using resources wisely.
Right.
Without becoming enslaved by them. That's part of living out this vocation well.
Okay.
But we can't forget about the people involved.
Right.
What about employees? Colleagues, customers? How does an entrepreneur navigate those relationships in a way that reflects this entrepreneurial vocation?
That's a great point. It's easy to get so focused on the bottom line.
Yeah.
That you forget about the human element.
Right.
What guidance do our sources offer on that front?
Well, they really highlight the importance of community and fostering human dignity within the workplace.
So it's about more than just creating a productive work environment.
Oh, absolutely. It's about treating everyone with respect, fairness, compassion, recognizing that everyone, regardless of their role, is made in the image of God.
I like that. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, feels respected.
Right.
Fostering that sense of of solidarity.
Exactly. It's about remembering that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another key element, charity.
Right.
It's a cornerstone of the Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
But how does it fit into this entrepreneurial context? Is it just about writing a check to a charity at the end of the year?
That's what I'm curious about too. I know I've struggled with that question myself.
Right.
Does it go deeper than that?
It definitely does. Our sources emphasize that true charity should be woven into the work itself. Not just the fruits of the work.
Okay.
It's about being generous with your time, your resources, your expertise.
So it could look like creating jobs in underserved communities.
Right.
Or using your products or services to address social problems.
Yeah.
Maybe even mentoring up and coming entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about seeing your business as a vehicle for positive change in the world.
But let's be real. Maintaining this mindset
Right.
amidst the daily grind.
Yeah.
Of entrepreneurship
Yeah.
can't be easy. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in deadlines, competition, the constant pressure to succeed. How do you avoid burnout?
You hit the nail on the head, and that's precisely why our sources also emphasize the importance of rest.
Rest. Wait, are we saying that taking time off is part of living out the entrepreneurial vocation? Wouldn't that hurt your business?
It's counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah.
But our sources suggest that prioritizing rest actually makes you more productive and effective in the long run. It allows you to come back to your work with renewed energy, clarity, and creativity.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
And trusting that God will provide even when we're not, constantly grinding.
That's right.
Okay.
It's about aligning your work habits with the rhythms of creation and recognizing that true success isn't just about maximizing output, but about living a balanced and fulfilling life. Remember, even God rested on the seventh day.
That's a great point. It's like we've been given permission to rest.
Right.
To take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And to trust that it's all part of a bigger plan.
Yeah. It is. And it's a beautiful reminder that we're not machines. We're human beings made in the image of God. We need time for renewal, for connection, for reflection. It's in those moments of quiet that we often receive our greatest insights and inspiration.
This is so encouraging. I feel like I'm getting a whole new perspective on what it means to be an entrepreneur. It's not just about building businesses.
Right.
It's about building lives that reflect the values of our faith.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, what about those of us who aren't entrepreneurs in the traditional sense? Can we still apply these principles to our lives?
That's a great question.
Really fascinating stuff. But you might be thinking, what if I'm not an entrepreneur in the traditional sense? Yeah. Does any of this apply to me?
That's a question I'm sure many of our listeners are pondering.
Yeah.
And the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay.
Remember, vocation simply means calling.
Right.
And every Christian, regardless of their profession, has a unique calling from God.
Okay, so it's not just about starting businesses.
No.
But how do we connect the dots between what we've learned about this entrepreneurial vocation and say being a teacher,
right,
a nurse, or even a stay-at-home parent?
The key is recognizing that the principles underlying the entrepreneurial vocation can be applied to any field.
Okay.
Think back to those characteristics we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Risk-taking, persistence, creativity, adaptability, service to others. These are valuable in any vocation.
So it's like a transferable skill set for living out your faith.
Yeah.
No matter what your job is.
Precisely. Imagine a teacher who's passionate about their students. They might take risks with new teaching methods.
Yeah.
Persist in helping struggling learners and constantly adapt their approach to different learning styles. That's entrepreneurial.
You're right. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And a nurse facing, difficult situations might need incredible persistence.
Yeah.
Compassion and the ability to think on their feet
Right.
Even in life or death situations, that's definitely using entrepreneurial skills in a very real way.
Absolutely.
And what about a stay-at-home parent?
Right.
Talk about creativity, adaptability, and service to others.
Absolutely.
They're constantly managing a changing landscape.
Yeah.
Juggling multiple demands and nurturing the next generation. I mean, that's an incredibly demanding and valuable enterprise in its own right.
It is. It is.
Wow, I'm starting to see it now.
Yeah.
It's not just about what you do,
Right.
but about how you do it.
That's right.
And the underlying motivation behind it.
That's the heart of it.
Yeah.
It's about bringing that spirit of excellence, service, and faith to whatever you do.
Yeah.
Recognizing it as a participation in God's work in the world.
So whether you're building a business, educating young minds,
Yeah.
caring for the sick,
Right.
or raising a family, it's about approaching your work as a calling, a vocation,
Right.
a way to express your faith in tangible ways.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing the inherent dignity and value of all work. Even the seemingly mundane or hidden tasks can be a contribution to the common good when done with the right spirit.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a completely new understanding of what it means to live out my faith in the workplace, wherever that may be.
That's great to hear. And that's precisely what we hope to achieve with this deep dive, to inspire you to see the potential for holiness and meaning in your own unique vocation.
You've definitely done that.
Good, I'm glad.
Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final takeaway for our listeners, something they can ponder as they go about their day.
If entrepreneurship at its core is a participation in God's creative work, how can you apply that insight to your own endeavors, whether you're in business, education, healthcare, or any other field? How can you see your work as a way to reflect God's love, creativity, and care for the world?
That's a powerful question, and one I hope each of our listeners will take to heart. It's a reminder that our work, no matter what it is, can be an expression of our faith, a way to bring a little bit of heaven to earth.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We'll see you next time.
Take care.